Oh, thank you very much. I'm moving to Calderdale. Yeah, I spent too long in London. Do I sound like I'm from Yorkshire? Oh, thank God for that. I spend about £1,000 a week on elocution lessons, innit? I live in London, and people say to me that they don't quite understand my accent. They think they think I'm from Birmingham. Can you imagine how depressing that is? And they say to me often, but I'm actually from Yorkshire. So I just have to, when I got off the train last night, I do this every time I come back to Yorkshire, and I stand up and I go, do you know what I mean? I love it, I love Yorkshire. Why did I leave, you might ask? Well, one of the reasons why I left are all the reasons I should come back, actually. It was exactly opposite of the things in that film. But I'm going to talk to you about some stuff, right? And the first thing I should say is that the titles get in the way. I've taken the day off to come to do this, so I like to do these things outside the turning point frame so that I can speak my mind and not have to worry. So I'm not here as Chief Executive Turning Point, right? I'm here as Victor Adebowale, so I can gob off at you for a bit, and then we can have a chat. Is that all right? The first thing I should say is that all these titles, you know, I'm in Yorkshire, so I feel I'm amongst friends. You know, these are my people. I don't know why I'm looking at you, but I'm just, you know. So I guess you just refer to me as Professor Lord Victor Adebowale. CBE. No, Victor will do nicely. So I've got to talk to you about a couple of things. There's a list of things I've got to talk to you about. The first thing is there's a list of things that they get the money's worth, I guess. But the first one is to talk to you about leadership. And actually, that film's beautiful, and there really is. And I don't know. You should have total pride in this place. You should have total pride in this place. But I want to talk about how local government is changing and how leadership is becoming such a massive issue for anybody who's running anything these days, certainly local government. And I'm going to explain to you why I think that's important, right? You know, leadership, for those of you that are interested and talk about leadership and books about leadership, is a $35 billion a year industry. Right? There are more books written about leadership than virtually any other aspect of business, right? And often these books confuse leadership with management. So I'm going to tell you what I think the difference is, right? I think it's important. The difference between leadership and management is that leadership, and this is just my view, but I've spent quite a lot of time thinking about it, is that leadership involves an emotional investment in the outcome. Now, which isn't to say that management doesn't. It's just that management really is about the allocation of resource. And it's the reason why management is under increasing threat from Uber, right? Because increasingly, particularly middle managers, that stuff's going to be taken over. It's going to be taken over by machines, intelligent machines. Right? And you're all sitting there thinking, what the hell has this got to do with Calderdale? We don't do machines here. Of course you do. You know, this will affect everything and everybody. I did a piece of work a year ago in London. It was a report called the London Fairness Commission, in which I got a load of people to tell the people in power what fairness is. And one of the things that really shocked me was the discovery that something like 50,000 jobs in the middle management layer were going to disappear in the next five years. That's in London. And these people, these are experts. These aren't just, you know, these are people. These are junior lawyers. These are doctors. These are experts that are going to be gone. Right? We have to find something else to do. So, the question of leadership becomes absolutely central, and the question of leadership in local government is even more important because of this thing called place. Everybody's talking about place. I did a piece of work. Those of you that don't get out much and like a book to read, you can read something called Get Well Soon, which is a report that was done by this collaborator that Robin so kindly mentioned about the power of place and about the shift. But leadership. Let me explain to you what I mean by telling you a story, because it's probably a bit easier, about a place called Tredegar in Wales. Right? About 70 odd years ago, the people of Tredegar got fed. Anybody from Tredegar here? Tredegar. I'm from Wakefield. Do you know what I mean? Tredegar. Cool. Tredegar. See, out Yorkshire, if I was in South, people would sit there with their arms folded and they'd tell me at the end, "You got it wrong." Tredegar. People of Tredegar got fed up of not being able to afford to go to the doctors. Because in those days, you couldn't pay, you couldn't get help. So they got together and they started putting money aside so that if you were ill in Tredegar, you wouldn't have to pay, because everybody paid. Right? Now, there was another way in which you could get health care, which is that you got your salary top-sliced by your employer, and that was used to provide you with health care. Unfortunately, it wasn't particularly fair or transparent, and all the money went to your health care. And actually, the experiences of the workers, many of whom were coal miners, of that particular scheme was that it was akin to slavery. So, after a while, they developed quite a sophisticated system in which nobody paid, but everybody got decent health care. I mean, really sophisticated. We're talking about not just health, but social care being provided for people. So one day this chap turns up who actually was born in Tredegar and worked in the mines, and he had a particularly important job, and he decided to go back to Tredegar to have a look. Yeah, I know, I keep anyway. And to have a look, and he discovered this system, and he thought it was absolutely brilliant. He thought, you know what, this is the kind of thing that should be happening everywhere. So he made it happen everywhere. And that thing's called the NHS. And the importance of that story is that it captures two things. One, leadership, and the other, place. And the thing that it captures about leadership is what I call the from-to paradox, which is absolutely relevant to local government right now. If you look at all the major social changes that have occurred, certainly in this country, they've often occurred as a result of one person, or two people, it's usually one or two people, being absolutely convinced that we needed to change something, right? But in so doing, taking the chance, the opportunity to learn on behalf of everyone else, which is a risky business. Right? It's not so much the standard model of Western male leadership, which is called the lead guitar model, which is usually no present company accepted, don't take this the wrong way, but usually involves a white guy standing with his legs slightly apart, telling you what to do. Right? Sorry, but you know, I couldn't come up with a better model, but the women in the room know what I mean. Yeah? The problem with that model is that it's an illusion. Right? It's a very convenient illusion, particularly in times of complexity and times of uncertainty. You know? We are hardwired to seek certainty, and we're hardwired to seek certainty in the simplest way. So if somebody comes along and says, I've got the answer, we're kind of hardwired to be attracted to that person, whether they've got the answer or not. Those of you that might have read Mein Kampf, I have, but will notice in that book that Hitler points out, quite cynically, really, that if you want to lead a load of people, create uncertainty, and then present yourself as the answer. Quite simple. Right? You're not the answer, but you can present yourself as the answer. Sooner or later, that model of leadership dissolves because it's not sustainable. Right? Local government has been through, 60% cuts. It is, and I don't think it's not just me that says this. There's economists from the ODC who would agree with me. It's probably the most efficient model of public service we have in this country, probably in Europe. It has performed every year, cut after cut after cut. And the problem is, the model, the old model of leading by telling, won't work anymore. And the reason why it won't work is that we can't cut anymore. We have to change. And we have to change together, and we have to change place, which demands a different kind of leadership. It demands the kind of leadership that often people refer to as system leadership. Those of you who are interested in this kind of stuff, you might want to read a very good paper by Peter Senge, who defines system leadership very nicely and wonderfully, but I'm not as smart as him, so I'll just tell you what I think it is, really. And system leadership involves, it's hard, well, first of all, it's hard. Right? I was going to start my talk by quoting a poem at you about leadership, which goes something like this, very quick. It goes, I want to be leader, I want to be leader, I want to be leader. Okay, you're the leader. I'm the leader? What do we do now? Now, the thing about system leadership is that it involves the leader learning on behalf of the system. It involves holding an awareness of the future vision in hard relief. So it's about saying this is the direction that we're going in, but being flexible enough to understand that getting there may take more than one route. It involves finding people that are willing to work with you, even though many people may not understand what it is that you're working on. It involves, in the words of Rosie Beth Cantor, taking people from where they are to where they haven't been yet. It involves ploughing paths where there are none. And it involves the following critical skills. The ability to build teams. I spend a lot of my time working on teams and with teams and in teams, trying to get people to work together. And I can tell you now, the ability to work and build teams is critical. It's a fundamental skill, and if you haven't got it, you're probably not going to be a very effective leader in the future. It involves understanding that relationships trump objectives every single time. Most of you will have been in rooms where the leader will come in and they'll say, right, this is the objective. We're going to hit that, and that target. Everybody's too scared to say no. Or, actually, you're talking nonsense. Or, that's impossible. Or, I can achieve that target, but it'll probably kill people. Right? What happens is people interpret that objective in the way that they think will get them out of that room fast, will please the leader, will save them from embarrassment, anything to stop individual ignominy. Right? And you'll have noticed, if you've been in that situation, that when you get back together again, everybody will have hit the target but missed the point. You noticed? And the leader will go, but we agreed an objective. We agreed. Right? And the reason why that doesn't happen, why that happens, why that objective has generally been a waste of time, and I have seen billions of pounds, and it is billions of pounds of your tax money wasted in that way. The reason why that happens is a failure to build trust. And trust can only be built by everyone being orientated around the same problem, the same issue. Which, in the case of Calderdale, you've got 210,000 people. It's a lovely population to work with, actually. Not too big and not too small. Are pretty clear Calderdale, like many places in the north, has an inequality gap. You've got a 9.7-year life equality gap for men. I think it's about 9 for women. That's significant. You know, that's a focus. You have an economy challenge. I mean, I was talking to your leader earlier, but I know this for all local authorities. You could be spending well over half your total income on elderly care and children, while the government reduces its grant to you and relies on your economic performance to provide you with whatever income you have got. That's the economy challenge. You have an environmental challenge. Now, all those challenges have to be presented to you in a way that you all agree that these are the things that Calderdale faces. I think you have a cohesion challenge as well, by the way. Yorkshire does, but Calderdale certainly does. You have a cohesion challenge. And what I mean by that is, you know, you live in a multicultural society, whether you like it or not. People who tell you that you don't, this is what you do. You take them to the kitchen, you get a glass, and you put some black coffee in it, right? That's a monocultural society. You then pour milk into it, and you say to them, try and unmix it. You live in a multicultural society. Those are the challenges that you face, and how you understand them collectively creates the orientation that builds the trust. You still with me? The problem with having all these titles is that I really don't care. If you all got up and left, I'd just keep talking. But the leadership challenge in local government has never been more acute. It is I would say, it's the most challenging job in public services, to lead complexity, because that's what local government is. It's complexity embodied in a place. And what is local government? What is local government? What is Calderdale? It's the following things. And these are things that are quite ancient, really. It's a place of convening. You know, the power to convene on behalf of a place and to define the challenge in such a way as to encourage orientation and trust lies in very few places in a place. The local government, local council is one of those places. It's one of the reasons when you go to places, it's not just because of the ego of the leader and the chief exec, that often when you go to a place, the council offices are at the centre. It's because there's an inbuilt desire for human beings to have something that they can convene around. And that convening power is pretty powerful. It also, the bit that people forget, and I think Grenfell is a very good example. I followed the Grenfell story closely, is that I think local government holds purpose. It holds the place purpose. What are we here for? Not just the council, but the place. What is our purpose? And in that, I really like the first 1,000 days. I read that report, and it spoke to me, because I'm interested in the future. And most of us in this room, virtually everything that we do, whether we like it or not, consciously or unconsciously, is about the future. Do you understand where I'm coming? It's about the future. It's about the expression of a place is often in its youth, in its children. So the holder of purpose is one of the key functions of local government, embodying a vision. But it's also the governor. And what I don't mean governor as in governor, although there are some local authorities that love that role. I mean governance. I mean the giving away, actually, of power in the interests of change, but governing its use so that it is equitable and equally distributed. That's what I think the future of local government leadership is fundamentally about. That's what I hope you are trying to achieve in Calderdale. Now, there's a couple of things I want to talk to you about before I shut up, because I've spent a lot of time talking about leadership, and perhaps I shouldn't have done, but I just think it's important. I mean, at the end of the day, institutions like local government, the NHS, governments for that matter, have you noticed something? Have you noticed that institutions are being trumped, and I use that term deliberately, by movements? You notice that? That institutions are under threat from movements. Some good, some bad. But any institution that doesn't understand that its walls are porous, that its influence is uncertain, unless it is reaching out, unless its walls are porous, it's going to be in trouble. You know, education is no longer about the building. It's about the culture, it's about the way and learn, it's about understanding the people, the customers. We are now in a world where institutions will have to change. They will have to become like amoeba-like. They will have to shift while holding on to values and while holding on to purpose. So, I want to give you some examples of, I want to give you an example of, because I've talked a bit out up there, you know. How does all this make sense? Be practical, lad. What's up with you? From Yorkshire? Talking like a southerner. I want to give you an example of place, of something that I was involved in. I want to tell you this story, and then I'm going to shut up, right? This is something called Connected Care that I worked on for a while. I got called in by the government to work on something called New Deal for Communities, right? It was going belly up in this place in London, and they asked me to come in and sort it out, 50 million quid. And so I said yes, like a fool. And I went in and I sat down with a load of people who were on this committee to spend this money on their estate. And I realised that most of the people around that table had never been round a committee before. Because those of us that work in, you know, we're used to committees, we're used to managing them, we're used to manipulating them, we read about them in degrees in social policy. Committees, right? But if you haven't done all that, a committee, what's a committee? You see them on telly, right? And there are all these consultants and... Anyway, cut a long story short, I realised that one of the reasons why this thing was going belly up was that the people that lived on this estate, which by the way was a social care desert, didn't understand anything about the services that were there. Right, people still referred to the social services as the welfare. I suspect there are people in Yorkshire who still refer to social services as welfare. You know, basically in their heads it's child takers and the authorities coming down on you. You know, and I realised that this estate had social services and health, and yet it had poverty and unemployment and dis-ease. And I thought, this can't be right. As a taxpayer, I'm spending all this money, I'm not getting a lot of value, right? Anyway, to make me look like a hero, we saved the New Deal for Communities programme, Yo Vic, and I took from that a model, an approach, and I worked on this model, which is called Connected Care, and in a nutshell, it involves working with communities, taking a scientific slice of that community, teaching those people to understand what they've got, what they haven't got, how they need it, and to design services that work for them, because most determinants of health, most things that make you ill, can be prevented. And it's cheaper to prevent them than to provide for them. And most of those preventative interventions do not require people as qualified as most people in this room. Right? Take a slice of a community, engage that community, teach them to research, teach them to talk to each other, teach them to plan, give them the resource, not much, by the way, but pay them because their skills are as valuable as mine because they know about their communities, yeah? And people design services. And the design services that kept the elderly out of hospital, and the design services that employed young people. And we tried this in about 17 different areas. And it worked. And indeed, it was evaluated, I'm trying to find the evaluation here, it was evaluated by the London School of Economics, who said that for every £1 spent, there was a saving of anything up to £1,000, right? So you might ask yourself, why aren't we doing this everywhere? Connected care everywhere, right? I shall tell you why, and I shall tell you because of power, right? Power gets in the way of change. People don't give it up easily, and it has to be negotiated with, danced with. But power is the thing that stops change, and I can't talk about leadership or place without talking about power, because power is the thing that will stop progress. It's use, it's misuse, and it's abuse. Connected care is still going. It was ahead of its time. It's perfectly possible to develop, and if you want to save money on health and social care, reduce demand. If you want to reduce demand, engage the population. If you want to engage the population, get them to design and deliver the services that will prevent them being patients. The thing that stops you is power. So, I'm going to leave you with 4 rules of engagement, right? So we've gone from leadership to engagement. These are things that you can actually do, right? 4 rules. I say these all the time, and then people tweet them, and they've become the Adebowale rules of engagement. Very good, actually, the Adebowale Parston rules, because a friend of mine called Greg Parston, who's an academic, wrote them down. If you write something down in a paper and you put your name against it, they become academic rules. So he's got his name on it. Anyway, 4 rules of engagement. And I have seen these, I have travelled all over the place testing this. I think they do work. The first one is listening. Now, just because I've been talking at you, doesn't mean that you've been listening. In order, I can tell you that I'm listening to you. It's meaningless. You have to feel heard. Right? I have to have evidence that you've been heard. Otherwise, I'm not listening. That's the first rule. The second rule is that there has to be a credible transfer of power. From me to you, from the power to the unpowered, which means that you can do something after the process of engagement that you couldn't do before. It's measurable. I can now do X. I couldn't do it before. Right? Measurable transfer. The third rule is that there has to be, at best, well, at worst, actually, at worst, the outcome has to be co-produced. Right? If I tell you that I'm engaging with you, but I'm telling you what the service is going to look like, what it's got to do, what the budget, all that, that's not engagement. I'm telling you what the outcome's going to be. Right? At worst, the outcome's got to be co-produced. Otherwise, it's meaningless. Right? At worst. At best, since you're the taxpayer, the customer, and the user, you should be defining the outcome. Right? Not rocket science. So, the outcome. The third rule. And the fourth rule is very simple. It's design, right? It's very simple. Design. Now, I know that Calderdale has the same challenge that most health systems have, which is people who go into A&E a lot, right? Why do people go to A&E a lot? I sit in the board of NHS England and we ponder this, and I think the answer is really simple. It's because it says accident and emergency. It does what it says on the tin, and when you talk to your relative, daughter, sister, mother, lover, friend, and you say, I'm going to A&E, they know exactly what it does, they know exactly where it is, and they know exactly how to get there, right? The design of any service that you can't describe in one sentence to your friend, lover, mother, brother, whatever, it's not going to work. Ask any business person. Ask any business person. Design. Those are the 4 rules. Right, I've talked enough. I've banged on. I've talked about leadership. I think I've talked a bit about place. I could bang on about place forever. This is a lovely place, but place is only as good as the people in it. People make place as much as the buildings are beautiful. You're Calderdale, not the building that you sat in. The one thing that I'd like to leave you with is this possibility. We are in a moment in local government, which is, it's not just local government, in communities. You are fractals of the country. You're a small part of Britain, right? As was Tredegar. As was Tredegar. I'll never forget this. Tredegar. And the thing about Tredegar that I think is really powerful is that every single person in Tredegar thought, why not us? Yeah? So I want to leave you with the notion, why not Calderdale? Why not you? Why not now? Thank you very much.